I love being able to mix it up in all different industries now because I'm like, here's what this industry is doing that might work for you. Or conversely, this is what this industry is doing that may work for you. And they just never thought about it because I've got friends that have only been, they're builders. So they've only been in building masterminds, or in the fitness industry. They've only been in fitness masterminds. And then they get into my world where I'm like giving advice from different industries. They're like, holy crap, I've never thought of it that way.
Josh, thank you so much for joining. I think there's a lot of really interesting topics to cover here today. When we were having our pre-call a few weeks ago, I was like I was blown away by your story. I don't think I've ever talked to an EOS implementer that started on the banking side, the wealth management side. And so why don't we start there? How did you get into wealth management at like a Fortune 100 company?
Yeah, so short story is my father was in the business, but that's not the real story. The real story is I was trying to stay away from my father. So I went to college to play football, not to go to college. Probably wrong intent uh, in hindsight, but as soon as I was done playing football, I dropped out of school. So, what's a college dropout to do? Well, I started selling pagers and cell phones when I was 16 at Circuit City, and some of my friends had migrated to Best Buy at that time. I got a job as a sales manager at Best Buy, and 2 years into that, kicking butt, running a top three store in the country, and I go to ask for a raise, and they tell me no, and not because of I wasn't doing a good job or anything like that, but just corporate stuff, right? I knew people that were older than me and getting paid more, even though I was kicking their butt month in and month out. And so that really didn't sit well with me. So I kind of tucked my tail between my legs and called my father at 24 years old and said, "Hey, I want to be doing that, doing something that doesn't have a ceiling, something that I control what I'm worth, not a corporate structure." And so I went all in. And I went through the process like anyone else, knowing that I'd have a red target on my back, being the boss's son, and that then we were off and running. So at 24 years old, I made that leap into entrepreneurial world, running my own financial advisory practice. Ran that really well for 10 years, and I was doing so well on both the leadership and personal practice wise, running my show effectively, having multiple team members and recruiting and developing people. What I found was that my joy was actually coming in developing others. So that leadership kept pulling me over towards developing others more than just building my own machine. And so through that process, to shorten the story a little bit, the Fortune 100 company tapped me on the shoulder to succeed my father. And there was a lot of um, trials in that, I'll say, because they really didn't want the view of nepotism, even though it wasn't his choice, it was their choice. It was just the optics of it, right? So there were some trials in doing that, but eventually they decided I was the right person to succeed him. I was at that time the youngest managing partner in the country appointed at 35 years old, and got to grow that for 5 years. It was an amazing time. The COVID time wasn't fun, but it still was a challenging yet amazing time. I was living what I thought was my purpose in this world and just continuing to grow. Like the year of COVID, the major, I know it was 2 years, but the major one, 2020, when we had to send 250 employees home, the world shuts down. Now, we were a face to face business at that time. So, in our world, like we're sitting across the kitchen table from someone, we're sitting across our desk from a couple or a family. Like 95% of our business was face to face, and that gets shut down just like that. And so, there was a lot of trepidation, some fear, anxiety around that shutdown, but we were up 30% at the end of the year. It was amazing. What it really taught us was, or it allowed for us, was business to be normalized, like you and I are speaking today. Like Skype had been invented for a decade, we just never used it. It wasn't compliant friendly, right? So we got normalized onto the Zoom world, and it actually made us more efficient in being able to see our clients. I live in the Midwest, so there's snowstorms, there's stuff that comes up where people can't make it to the office. Well, we can just flip on Zoom and we can meet that way. And neither of us have to leave. I don't have to leave the office. You don't have to leave the comfort of your home, whatever it may be. So it actually, in that period, turned out to be a good thing. Now, fast forward to 2021 and how it all ended. I just want to put this out there as my plan, my goal was to run that business from 35 to 55. And it comes down to that age old adage of you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. And that rang true. So in the summer of 2021, I get a call from corporate. They're coming to town. They were supposed to be in town 9 or 10 a.m. Get a call at 7:30 a.m. I just got out of the shower. I'm almost ready. Got through my morning routine. They said, "Hey, Josh, we got into town early. Would you meet us at the Marriott?" Now, this particular Marriott was only a tenth of a mile away from my office. So it was odd that I was requested to meet up. And, in my head, I'm like, could be just breakfast, coffee, whatever, prep for the day, whatever. But on the way there, I had a very sinking feeling in my stomach. One of those, like, something really bad's about to happen. One of those feelings. And so I'm tossing and turning in my head, like, hey, we're just up 30%. Like things are going really well. Like, why am I having these bad feelings, bad thoughts? Well, sure enough, I walk in there, the Marriott. This is a pretty big one where big opening in the lobby, breakfast area, stuff of that nature. So I go to sit down with them. And as soon as my butt hits the chair, they say, "Josh, there's no easy way to tell you this. We're making a move. You're no longer a managing partner." Now, when I tell this story, I got to back up a little bit because in 2019, so this was 2021. In 2019, I was handed the book Traction by my top advisor. And he goes, "Josh, I think you'll love this. It'll be great for you and the firm. My team's running on it as we speak." I'm like, great. Took the recommendation, read Traction, and I look around my leader, and then I read Rocket Fuel right away. I was like, this is great. Going to read Rocket Fuel now and continue on through the EOS library. However, I was so ADD that I didn't read the back of the book that would have told me that I could have hired an implementer. So I literally didn't know they existed because I would have gladly stroked that check. So I go to try and self-implement the system. And what I quickly realized, I look around my leadership table, they were all advisors slash leaders. They're brought up the same way I was brought up. They had the same thought processes, skill sets, stuff of that nature. What I was looking at in EOS language is a table full of visionaries and no integrator, no one to hold us accountable, no one to like say, "Hey, great discussion, guys. What's the solution? How are we going to move forward?" So we would, and I'm sure there's been many entrepreneurs that may be listening to this right now that have been in meetings where like we have great discussion and nothing ever gets done. That's what was happening in our world. So go back to 2021, and in that meeting where I'm terminated, it was really interesting. Like my world falls apart in that instant. Everything I had worked for, blood, sweat, and tears, succeeding my father, all the different things. 250 employees. We're managing 4 billion in assets. $35 million company, all gone in an instant. What happened is I was mentoring growing young leaders. One of them happened to be a cancer in the culture. And so this was a wrong person, right seat situation. And another aside to that, I know as in hindsight being 2020, had I had an EOS implementer in the room, they would have pulled me aside as the visionary and said, "Hey, Josh, you got a problem." But I didn't. I just had me in the room. And what I kept chalking up to immaturity were actual character flaws. And so that was my downfall. He sued me for discrimination. Not because I actually discriminated, but he was using the movement at that time, DEI, the BLM riots had just happened, stuff of that nature. He started seeing his skin color as an advantage and trying to push him forward into the company. So he made up a bunch of lies. The company knew this. They did their own separate investigation. As you guys can imagine, Fortune 100 companies, they have big HR teams, big legal teams. They did their thing. I was absolved by them. But 2 months after I was served with papers from him is when that fateful day came. And so the only questions I could muster in that point is like, what happened? You guys said you were going to help me, and now you're terminating me. Like, what happened? And they didn't have any good answer, and they still don't. And it frankly doesn't change anything. The point being is that I was done, and I had to go through what the next steps were in figuring out who was I when everything was taken away? Who am I? What am I going to do next? All these different things. And I'll stop there because I'm sure there's probably thoughts you got going.
Maybe not thoughts, but a ton of questions on this story. Like, I guess the first is, and I'm gonna take us back, and we'll get back to where you just left off with this. But like, one of the things that was interesting in what you said is like, you thought you had found your purpose at the time, and like, how did you define your purpose then, and how has that evolved or changed throughout these experiences?
Yeah, great question. So in EOS world, we love to talk about Dan Sullivan's unique abilities, right? The work that we love to do and we're uniquely gifted at doing. That's what I was doing. Me leading people, me being the high level visionary, pouring into them, helping them see visions that they didn't yet see for themselves, developing them so that they could live the life of their dreams. That's all the work I was doing, recruiting others into the firm that shared our values, that really wanted to make a better life for themselves and their families and have an impact on the world, because advisors really do. Is like, in US society, we're not taught about money. So a large part of what we do as advisors is teaching people about money, about tax strategies, how to retire efficiently, how to plan for your education for your kids efficiently, all that different stuff. So we're doing a lot of education. And that's, for me, what I realized early on was, if I just built my personal practice, I and did that effectively really well, I could serve about 500 households with a team underneath me. However, if I go and recruit and develop other advisors, my impact is now exponential. And so that's where I fell in love with the leadership side. Is okay, if I have 115 advisors, which is what I had when everything fell apart, like, and they can all serve 500 households. Now my impact is almost infinite. And that's where I was truly living, felt like I was truly living into my purpose. And then, yeah, when we get into the transition piece, going back to the story, I'll tell you what I did to figure out what was next.
One interesting point that you brought up as well is this idea of being able to step into a role where your father was there, and there's probably a lot of perceptions and like other things that are happening, and you talked about this like trial thing. What's interesting about that, and I was just having a conversation with someone about this yesterday, where they work at a private equity firm, and basically they're inserted into problem companies, and so when there's an issue, the private equity inserts them into one of the portfolio companies. They come in, they help fix it, and then they go. And what was interesting around that conversation was, like, my question was, how do you build trust fast enough to be the change agent that you need to be when things are already kind of, a disaster, or things are problematic? And to translate that kind of view to what you did, is there's probably a lot of skepticism as you're getting into this role. And so what are some of the things that either you had to do either in the moment or before that happened to like build the trust and credibility to make sure people understood, like, you're there because you earned it. You're there because you deserve it. You're there because you're going to excel, and not because someone happens to share a last name.
Yeah, and I had a lot of that, probably imposter syndrome because of the last name, right? That being said, because I was in that firm, they all got to see me earn it. I unequivocally earned it. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not challenges. I put myself in a position to be the choice for the job, through my work ethic, through the numbers, every metric that was possibly given. I crushed it. We were beating cities that are 4, 5 times our size. Madison, Wisconsin, my district was winning against LA, Atlanta, Chicago, New York City. It didn't matter. Like, we were doing great for a mid-sized city. So I unequivocally put myself there. But the challenge that comes to it, there is a huge difference between being a leader in the firm and the leader of the firm. And it's interesting, the moment I was appointed, every single relationship got recontracted. And what I mean by that is, I didn't change. but their perception of me changed in the instant that I became the leader instead of a leader, instead of me being one of the boys or a friend that they could talk to or talk crap about this, that, and the other. Now being the leader, they all looked at me differently. So that was a psychological thing to get through a little bit. But one of the things that I did that was uh, really effective and really started to build the bridge in those relationships is I went and interviewed all the veteran advisors and just did a little fact finding with them and said, hey, what are the things that have gone really well in your world? What are the things you think the firm could improve upon? And how specifically can I help you? And those were like the three basic questions that I would ask to get the conversation started. And so if someone's coming into a firm where they're taking over, I would really recommend doing something like who are the key stakeholders? Who are the veterans? Who kind of hold the keys to the culture? And really take the time to build relationships and bridges with those people so that they have a little bit of your back. They're not going to totally have your back. None of your people do, because as soon as you make a mistake, they're going to talk about that mistake. That being said, the if you can start to build a little ground and a little trust with each of those people and continue to earn that trust over time, it can take you a long way.
We have this thing in the Navy that we're rolling out right now. It's called Get Real, Get Better, and it's got a whole bunch of different components and moving pieces. But the concept is like growth mindset and being able to see a problem, address a problem, and being able to do that at every level inside of the company or inside of the Navy. When you talked about sitting down and like getting people to share their problems or things that they might improve, sometimes that can be a double-edged sword because if someone has an issue but you can't resolve it or they don't see action, sometimes they can get caught in this trap of like, well, he asked me for all the problems or he asked me for the things that to improve upon, but I didn't see anything. What was your strategy to like build that trust through those conversations? Because I'm sure that everybody has a lot of great ideas, but how did you use that to quickly build trust?
Yeah, great follow up question because if you don't address, say, some at least some of the things on that list of problems, they just they feel like they dumped to you, but you didn't do anything. There was no action taken. So what I did was compile the list with my COO, Chief Operating Officer, and we looked for themes, and we also looked for quick wins. But one of the biggest things was that my dad, in tapering down, wasn't spending as much time with those veterans as he probably should have been. And my dad was a phenomenal leader, so this has nothing to do with saying that he was bad by any means. It was just he was running kind of to the tape uh, towards his retirement, and he probably wasn't paying as much attention to the people that he should have. And so I scheduled meetings with those as follow-up meetings. We showed proof of quick wins, and we looked for themes that we're going to take. We'll call them long-term issues for EOS language, themes in that we could say, hey, this is going to take a little longer to fix, but it is on our list and it is important to us.
I like that. I'd like that. And like, you know, the follow up there, being able to knock things off the list and make sure that people see it inside of the organization so they don't think it's just kind of going into the abyss, the ideas or the conversations. I'm trying to figure out how to approach the delicate conversation. And I've experienced some similar things down that avenue. Like we got sued, and it was one of these things where like I always thought when there are stories put out there that like there's always two sides to each story. But when I saw this lawsuit against us, I was like, there's zero truth in any of this. And it was a game, and it was a game played by lawyers and insurance companies, and you're just like, man, I don't like this game. Because me, like, I like building authentic, genuine relationships and helping people. And like that kind of felt a little bit of a betrayal. And then to see like how nasty it got, I was like, I'm losing faith in humanity. How did that impact you?
Yeah, so that's really good. I'll say this: if you're in business and you haven't been sued yet, it's not a matter of if, but when. because unfortunately we just live in a litigious society where there's way too many attorneys looking to make a dollar. So this guy hired an ambulance chasing attorney, so he didn't actually have to pay anyone for their hourly rate. I had to go hire a real attorney to defend my name. And like you said, in this case, it was 100% lies. Now, here's the interesting thing that you find out in these cases, and it may be different state by state, but here's one thing. He was secretly recording our conversations. Well, in Wisconsin, it's only one person that has to approve that, and it could be the person that's secretly recording. However, if you secretly record someone in Florida without their permission, that's a felony. So that's different state by state. But the other thing that I found out is, like my first thing was, can we countersue for slander? And he's like, and my attorney's like, no, unless it's outside of the scope of what they're suing you for. And I'm like, what? But it's all lies. I was like, and we can, and like the witnesses and all, like, we can prove this. And he goes, if he starts speaking poorly about you or saying other things outside of the scope of this law, and we can prove that, then yes. But if not, we can't. I'm like, this just makes zero sense. So anyone could just literally make anything up, and you can't countersue them for slander. And it just, you find out a lot about the law. But how you deal with it is you got to stay right with you and keep your own mental health above. That lawsuit was 2 years of time and several $100,000 of money. And that was just defending my name, right? And against lies and someone that just really had a bone to pick. And we tried to do everything right by him. Like I literally gave him, when he first started in the business, I personally recruited him, gave him $5,000 worth of custom suits out of my own closet so that he could look the part and feel like he could go do the thing. Had him sit at our dinner table, celebrated birthdays together, like did everything possible to pour into this human, and they still stab you in the back. That's a betrayal that I don't wish upon anyone. But that being said, once it happens, you got to keep your mental health right, and you got to keep your head above water no matter what. And that's the thing to move forward. So those dark clouds followed for 2 years, but in between those, it was all right. I can't stay still. I got to continue moving on in purpose. And so once my purpose was taken away, it's figuring out what was next.
What's interesting about what you just said is like if you haven't, it's like the old adage with the motorcycles. It's like if you haven't been down on a motorcycle, it's just a matter of time. And I agree with you. It's the same thing.
I literally put that in my book.
Did you?
That exact analogy. Yep.
I 100% agree. And the problem is like the first time it happens, it feels like very loud, like very noisy, and it's like this is the end of the world. And then you realize like it comes with business. Like that's why lawyers exist. And then you have to hire one. Now you're just spending a whole bunch of money on lawyers. And like one of the crazy things was I didn't realize like individuals could get sued, and we had some individuals inside of the company. So instead of like some sort of wrongful termination or something like that going just against the company, we had different people inside of the organization. And I was like, well, why did they attach that name? And it was like, oh, because that name's in the state of California, and if they attach that name, then like it puts more pressure on the company to settle it as fast as possible, even if it's all false, because they can keep it in California but start adding more people. I was like, this is crazy. But anyhow, I agree with you there. I agree that it's just a matter of time, and then it just kind of becomes a cost of doing business, and just trying to stay above it.
Yep. You can do everything right. And I'm not saying I did everything right. There's mistakes I made in relationship with him. There's some mistakes that I made. One of the biggest mistakes is I should have fired him 18 months prior to that all happening. But I was afraid of getting sued. And that thing I was afraid of happened anyhow. So for those of you pausing on getting rid of a cancer in your culture, because maybe you felt like I do and you're going to get sued, it's likely to happen anyhow. But in the meanwhile, you're running a detriment to your culture by keeping that individual in your culture longer than you should.
You probably have a lot of lessons learned out of like this specific circumstance now. So not just the lawsuits and the in business, this is just a part of doing business, but a lot of people like to say right person, right seat, or I've got the wrong person in the right seat. And they say these things, but we don't really get into like, what does that look like? And like, what are some things that you learned? And it doesn't have to be specific to this one. Like we can move off of this one, but you've dealt with this before. So like, what does the wrong person, when we talk about like toxic, or we talk about bad apples, like what does that actually look like in practice inside of an organization?
No, we'll use this one because it's a really good lesson. And I'm a few years removed from it, so I can speak to it a little bit more without getting emotional around it. Uh, he was a narcissist. He had a traumatic childhood, and and so I actually had a lot of empathy for him, and still do, because he's got hurt feelings trapped in an adult body. But what I've become very skilled at is interviewing for narcissists now, and I'll give people a couple questions that could help them hopefully prevent a narcissist from entering their world. So one of them is asking about their previous relationship with their direct superior, and just asking questions around that. And what you're looking for is, do they accept any blame, or do they place all blame on the previous company, direct superior, any other situation? So, and then ask about a conflict with a cohort at their previous company. Again, you're looking, are they accepting any blame, or are they pushing all blame away? So what I've come to learn is narcissists are incapable of accepting blame. It's always someone else's fault. So for instance, in this individual that we're speaking about right now, there was 5 or 6 times where a situation came to my desk where he had verbally harassed a female in the office. Never sexually, never anything like. And again, I kept chalking up to maturity, or immaturity, I should say. And I would have the conversation, disciplinary with him, and every time it was someone else's fault. They forced him to do this. They did this, and that caused him to lash out. Yada yada yada. Every single time. And again, I didn't know as much about narcissists at that time, but now I know, okay, he was incapable of accepting any responsibility for his own actions. And so not only do you have to interview on your core values, you also need to try to understand who the person is that's sitting across from you. And we also got to know and go into those interviews with the pretense that they're going to give us their Sports Center top 10. Like, it's just like when we go on our first date with a potential spouse, or girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it may be. You're not getting their Sports Center bottom 10 until 3, 6 months into the job. So our goal in interviewing is figuring out, no, where are your strengths? Where are your weaknesses? And figuring out, is there any character flaws that are going to screw up the great culture that we're trying to build? Like, I ask questions. I've done thousands of interviews. So that's one of my skill sets. Tell me about your mom. What was your relationship like? What's the number one core value that you held on to from her? And then same thing for dad. And then, was there a meaningful coach or teacher in their life? What value did you hold on to from them? Like, just digging deeper past the surface level interview questions that we all have been asked and tend to ask. It's like really trying to get to know the person and what they value and what they find to be true about themselves.
Interesting. I love those. If you saw me frantically writing, I was writing down those. Those are great questions to ask. And how long? There's this other thing that people talk about constantly. It's like, oh, like by the time I made the decision to make some sort of change, it was, I wish I would have made that sooner. Is generally, I waited too long. This is what a lot of people talk about. Like, how do you balance that? It is, let's say you asked all the questions, and this person was so good they just navigated right around. You start seeing some signs. Like, how do you know when to make that decision that, like, I messed up in the recruiting and it's time to part ways?
Yeah. Well, you're going to. Okay. So, first off, let's get that out there. We're all going to make mistakes. That being said, every one of us has heard the term hire slow, fire fast. The problem with that term is that it's incomplete. The incompletion of it is there's a middle part, which is what I call lean in. And lean in means, did I equip this person? Did I train and develop and pour into them enough for them to effectively do their job? And if I can answer all those questions, yes, that I've done everything possible for them to succeed, then it's fire fast. What's worse than the statement you made of like, oh, I should have done this sooner, is when your people say, what took you so long? That's worse. It's one thing for you to recognize it, but your people probably recognize it faster. Now, the culture that you want to get to, and I have two great examples of this, mid to large size companies, I would call them. Vortex Optics, they're out of Wisconsin, not too far from me. I'm great friends with the CEO and VP of sales, who happen to be a longtime client of mine. And then First Form down in St. Louis, which is probably valued at a couple billion now. But they make mistakes too, but they have unbelievable cultures. And here's what happens when they make a mistake, this this mistake comes into the company and they actually don't need to fire them. The reason being is they come in and the culture is so strong that this person, this mistake that comes in goes, I don't belong here. This is a cult. And they see themselves out. That's when you know you have an unbelievable culture. You don't even have to fire them because your people are operating at such a high level that this person that just wants to come in and loaf off or punch the clock or try to disrupt the great culture that you have, it won't work because your people are going to push them out. And because of accountability and structure and the systems and processes, if they're not following it to a T, they're going to go, I don't belong here. I got to go.
I love that. And we used to get that. We used to get that at Hunt to Killer where people would be like, am I in a cult? Because every single Friday we would get the entire team together and we would open up the call with core values. We would give a little vignette and kind of talk about one, and we would give out some acknowledgments. But some of the feedback was like, are we in a cult here? And like, my whole thing with that is like, if you can build a strong culture based around like core values that drive success, then like that's it. That's the fun. Like the problems in the business, not that they take care. I think there's this thing out there where people are like, oh, like take care of people and things will take care of. Like, no, like people are working very hard to solve the hard problems. But you've built that resilience into the institution to like facilitate those solutions. So I agree with you. Some people call it a cult. I call it a strong culture.
Well, if you think about it, cult is a part of the word culture. It's just how are we using it? Like, right? Are we creating a Jim Jones thing that's selfish and you're going to drink the Kool-Aid and die? No, if we can create a really strong culture that feels like a cult that's trying to change the world in a positive sense, that's not a bad thing. Because like in the example going into the EOS book and talking about core focus, well, I always give the Starbucks example, and I hope there's not raving Starbucks fans that are listening to me, but the Starbucks example is this. Their core focus is we're the premier purveyor of the finest coffee in the world. That's their opinion because I sit there and go, I think your coffee tastes like shit. It tastes burnt.
Yeah.
But that's my opinion. They believe, their culture believes that they're the finest purveyor of premium coffee in the world. And if they believe that and they get the people on the bus that in their company, in their culture that believes that, then that's what they're going to do. And they built a massive brand.
Now I feel, because we haven't even gotten to the EOS. Like we've spent so much time in this goodness. And how did so okay? How did we get to where we are today? Because there was like trials, tribulations. Today you're doing something completely different. Like where did that come from?
So in the 6 months, I was negotiating my exit. So I was like two legal battles at the same time. One with the person we just spent some time talking about. The other with the company on the exit. Some of it was structured with the buyout, and then some of it was unstructured that we were negotiating. That took 6 months. But in that time, which was the hardest 6 months of my life, because I went through the 5 stages of grief, it was just like losing a business is very analogous to losing a loved one. And so doing that, I was like, okay, I got to process these stages. I got to go through it. I got to lean in and not sweep it under the rug because I know the detriment that that can create. One of the tools that I created and I put in my book was I did a fancy T chart, and by fancy I mean as simple as possible. I drew a line down a piece of paper, no numbers on it. On the top left side, I said, what did I love about my previous world? And on the right side, I put, what did I hate? And I just made the list. I love pouring into people, leading, developing, helping them see visions bigger than they saw for themselves. I love solving big problems. I love chasing after and beating these bigger cities. at the same game. On the right side, I hated compliance. I hated FINRA and the SEC. Like I just hated dealing with that. It's a necessary part and important part of the financial world, but it was just not something I enjoyed. Narcissistic advisors didn't like that. Politics of the home office, corporate office, didn't like that. And then I just asked myself a really important question at the bottom of it. What if I could design a world where I only did the left side, the stuff that I loved? And so I started leaning into coaching and speaking. Okay, if I could just coach leadership teams, humans, people, like that's what I'm good at. Facilitating great conversation in the room, not just as an EOS implementer, but as I run a couple masterminds. One of my skill sets is really at leaning in and being vulnerable, like I've been with your audience today, and helping get the brain trust of the room, the other people in the room to open up so that we have some amazing uh, ideas and sharing and vulnerability that come together. That happens to be a skill set of mine. So I thought I was just going to do leadership coaching. And then as I got into the world of coaching entrepreneurs and leadership teams, I noticed that they all have two problems. One of them is leadership, human development, but the other one is systems and processes to help them scale and grow. So I was like, okay, I hit that a few different times. I'm like, all right, I got to go back to EOS. And being the kind of fact finder that I am, I looked at some other systems out there. I was like, just because I read Traction doesn't mean that's the one I should go with. So I, researched some of these others, and they all seem to be spin-offs of EOS. And I was like, all right, well, I'm going to go with the original one. So I qualified to purchase the franchise and go through all that, and went through training. And I had this epiphany as I'm sitting in training, because remember, I tried to self-implement. I was like, yeah, I might have gotten 10 to 20% of that right. Like I was like, and again, had I not been so ADD, I would have stroked the check to hire an implementer, but tried to do it on our own. Hired a great integrator. She's with me today. She's the only employee I brought with me out of those 250 to build this new thing. But then my wife looks at me and goes, I don't want you traveling all the time. We got 4 young kids. I was like, that's fair. So I had this field of dreams moment. If you build it, they'll come. And with my buyout of my previous business, I went to look for 80 to 100 acres and found 80 majestic acres. We call it Five Bridges Farm. And not only do I run my EOS sessions there, but we host retreats. People can do weddings out there and bourbon tastings, charitable events, all this different stuff that we do. But the session room is unlike any other session room, because I got 22-foot windows that bring the trees inside, and you don't feel like you're in a corporate room or a training room. You feel like you're in a space that fosters a lot of intellectual growth and great conversation. So that's where we got to today, is now not only with, so when I go to talk to entrepreneurs, it's really a fact finding to say, of those two major issues, and there's probably 136 little issues underneath that, but of those two major ones, which one's the major one for you right now? And then I got a leadership curriculum that takes them through that, or if there are more systems and processes, then we go straight to EOS conversations.
I feel like this whole idea of like the retreat or whatever people call them, it's like one of the most underrated things in business. And maybe I did it because it was selfish and I got to go visit cool places. But ever since like my first company, Run for Your Lives, like we always had a place. I don't think Airbnb existed back then, or at least not in the capacity it is today. But there was always this like higher level that the team would go to, like when we got them out of the city, out of the office, and we put them, like sometimes we would go to the mountains, sometimes we would go to the beach, but like what remained consistent is like we weren't in the office, and like we were able to kind of break that day to day. And I've seen your facility just through the Zoom, and it looks incredible, so I'm a little envious over here.
Well, you guys are welcome anytime. And but you're right. You think about some of the best conversations, and we do this with our 2-day annuals. When the team either flies in or drives into my farm, I say, hey, I'm not going to go to dinner with you guys tonight on purpose, because I want you to have that time together, not in a structured format, because some of our best conversations and ideas come over breaking bread, come over just a drink at a tavern. And so one of those things, like if you think about that, not just going to a retreat space, but some of your best conversations happen not in the office. They're at a lunch, they're at a dinner, they're at a cocktail hour, whatever it may be. And now you just got to have some accountability around, okay, that was a great idea. How are we going to solve this? Who's the to do? Who's the owner? All that different stuff to go from that.
One thing that I've learned through this podcast over the last 12 months is that we get a ton of EOS implementers and business consultant coaches, sales acceleration, business chairs. Like we get a ton of that audience. I think I originally thought, oh, this is going to be great. It's going to be ICPs. And I think it's really kind of that 80-20 blend. And like you've had tremendous success since buying the franchise, and you have some awesome clients. Like what was your strategy there? You're like, got it. This is the direction I'm going. I've kind of looked at all these different things. You go through the training, and then what? Like, how did you start? Where did you look?
I didn't have a fast start. It was funny. Everyone in class is like sitting there going, "Oh, you're going to break all the records." I was sitting at a table. It was the EOS annual conference. They're like, "Oh, this guy's going to break the records." I did not have a fast start, and the reason being is because my attention was divided. Which they preach, "Hey, you got to burn the boats and go all in." I couldn't do that at the structure that I was at. Like I had already bought the farm. I had already created these other curriculums and doing some one-on-one coaching as well. So I couldn't burn the boats. I mean, I could have, but it didn't make sense because the farm is expensive and I got bills to pay. But what I did was just continually was proactive about some of the mastermind groups I was in and adding value there before asking for anything in return. I was proactive about my social media because in the financial world, we really couldn't have it at that time. Like it was compliance wise in the financial world, it was really you were really weren't allowed. So I built my social media starting in coaching, not 10, 15 years ago, like I probably should have. So just being proactive about helping, created a newsletter, started getting that out on LinkedIn. You know, some of those things of just they're slower plays, but they snowball really fast, right? So if you can stick with being consistent with adding value on social media and creating a personal brand for yourself, people start reaching out over time. It may be 18 months, it may be 36 months, but there's some real equity that's built in providing value for no cost. So then word gets out. It was interesting. A lot of my clients to start were national; they weren't local. And over the last 12 months, I'd say I've gotten a lot more traction locally. Uh, and it wasn't intentional by any means. It was like, hey, we're going to take clients where it makes sense and continue to build from there. But I think that to sum it up, putting that equity out there, those it's like deposits in your relational bank accounts that don't pay off immediately. When they start snowballing, they snowball in a big way.
I I'm convinced that most people give up too soon, and like one of the examples of this, because this stuff takes time. And so this podcast, for instance, we started this podcast. It was the concept came up like at the end of 2023, and then early 2024 we started putting it together. And I think we got the first episode out about like a year and 3 months ago or something like that. For 10 months, nothing like kept having conversations, kept producing, kept sharing, kept doing all this. 10 months, nothing. Like the business wasn't getting a whole bunch of stuff or things like that. And then all of a sudden, it was like last August, last September, and it was just like it was like clockwork. And it's just snowballed ever since. And so, anyhow, long-winded. I think a lot of people just give up too soon because these things take time.
Well, one other addition I'd make, you're absolutely correct, but I should have mentioned this, is I see a lot of EOS implementers really only posting on EOS. And your audience doesn't want that. They want it, but in pieces. What I've done really well is show my vulnerability and my personal life, other aspects of me than just EOS. And I think that's brought a lot more personal brand equity because they feel like they know me as a human versus just an EOS implementer. And sometimes that's hard for people to do. But what I will tell you is that Rory Vaden's done a lot of this research. The personal branding is becoming far greater than the corporate branding. And people want to, I mean, all sales comes down to know, like, trust. We know this. If you're in sales, you run a business at all, comes down to know, like, trust. Well, if I can break the barrier where they already feel like they know me via just following me, and perhaps I've kind of eased into the like territory. Now I just got to prove that trustworthiness. So I've got, say, 2/3 of the matrix already solved. If they feel like they know me and like me, now I just got to solve the trust issue, which we can do either in a 90-minute meeting or we could do in a one-on-one call. One of the things that I've never had a 90-minute meeting go poorly because I'm always taking a call with the key decision maker ahead of time. And we're getting to know each other. And now they're going to be an advocate for me in the room before I ever step on into the room or onto the camera.
And when you say decision, are you very specifically like the owner, the founder, the visionary, or can it be any decision maker inside of the enterprise?
I would say 75% owner, 25% other key decision maker, because there might be a key decision maker on the team that's pushing the owner for EOS. That does happen, right? There's someone like a COO or would-be integrator, but they just haven't been titled that yet, that has read traction and they fell in love with the system and they're trying to get the rest of the leadership team to buy in. I've had some of those scenarios, but I typically want to get to the person that's going to make the decision to cut the check, which is usually the owner.
Got it. Um, I feel like I've got like hard pivots all over the place, but we have to talk about your book, which is like you've got a book coming out. If anybody is listening to this live, it is coming out. But by the time people are listening to this, hopefully it's going to be like around that same day. What is this book? What was the inspiration? Like, where did it come from?
So never in a million years did I think I'd write a book. And then the story that Ryan and I started with happened, right? That life happened, and I felt there was too many valuable lessons that needed to be shared. Hopefully, when people read it, it's called the Kairos Code. It's coming out August 7th. I'm running a big event with some world-class speakers up at my farm on August 7th. If people want to join in Madison, I can get Ryan the details on that. But it was the lessons learned. So what I part of the story I didn't tell was I wasn't allowed to go back into my office. They had security in case I showed up. This space I own 35,000 square feet. I couldn't even step foot in. So they so they had, or didn't mail, they had a moving company pack up all my boxes, get it to my house. It took me a month to even open the boxes, just emotionally. Once I opened the boxes, there was accolades, trophies, all the different stuff, designations that made me seem important that were in my office. Well, I had this heart epiphany that none of it mattered. None of it was going with me when I go to heaven. It was just going to be stuff that my family would have to take care of, much like a lot of our stuff in life. And I figured out that I had it all wrong. So I take people through what my leadership coaching curriculum is on. It's the 5 bridges. And most of us skip to bridge 4, which is what I call our environment. It's our professional life, our financial life, our accolades, stuff of that nature. And not that that's wrong, it's just the wrong order, because that's what I did. And I got it all wrong. Thank God the people that love me the most were still in my life. Thank God I took care of my health, because those things matter more than the stuff that I acquired or the accolades or the titles or the money or whatever. So I had this epiphany that bridge 1 is spiritual. And you may not believe in God like I believe in God, but we all need to know that we're spiritual beings and we have a purpose to serve here on this earth. Like, we've all been to a funeral, body's there, spirit's gone. We know this, so we just got to know that we are spiritual beings. And I believe knowing that and knowing what our purpose is comes first. Second bridge is internal. We've all been on an airplane. They tell us if the oxygen mask drop, put yours on first before assisting others. But we tend to forget it, or we think, or we buy into that taking care of myself is selfish. Some people have that thought, when actually I would reverse that thought. It's the most selfless thing to do, because I believe that if I'm not right mentally, emotionally, and physically, I can't be the best for you. I can't be the best for my spouse. I can't be the best for my kids. So I need to take care of me and get myself right after the spiritual piece. So spiritual bridge 1, internal 2, relationships is bridge 3. Relationships are the fruit of life. Those are the people that will be at your funeral. Those are the people that will be around your deathbed if you don't screw it up, if you don't spend all your time and energy building your business in spite of fostering those great relationships. Then we can get to bridge 4, the professional, the financial, and don't forget to be creative and have joy in that. And bridge 5 is legacy. Now, what people get wrong about legacy is they think it's some time off in the distance. They think it's after I die, and that's a long time from now. Well, I was in financial planning. I've delivered death claims, insurance, life insurance checks to parents of a 2-year-old, to 34-year-old widow, to everywhere in between. So we never know when our time is up. Legacy is not what you leave behind, it's what you leave in people, and you're doing that every single day. So in effect, you are building your legacy every single day you're blessed to be here on this earth. You just think it's some time off in the distance. So our job is to get these bridges right, and these are the lessons I learned. So I tell the story in more detail that we talked about today. I talk about the bridges, and I actually built a life assessment, life quotient assessment. We're calling it LQ, kind of like EQ, IQ. And you can take that assessment for free to find out how far along or where you are on these specific bridges and where you need work.
I love that. And you said it comes out
August 7th.
August 7th, and they can get it
anywhere, Amazon. So if you're a Kindle reader, you can pre-order it now. We just own it. Soft cover, hardcover are coming out August 7th.
Awesome. I think we hung up last time, and I grabbed a Kindle copy. I think it's a Kindle copy pre-order.
Yeah, Kindle copy pre-order, and even on there they have like October 31st. It's going to come out far sooner. They just put that date out there just in case something goes wrong.
Awesome. So someone's been listening to this for the last hour and they're like, holy crap, like I've got this business and like I know I've needed an implementer, and they're like, I love Josh. I need Josh to come and help me implement. Where can someone find you?
Pretty easy. My name is decently unique, I've found. So SEO is good. So joshkosnick.com. I'm at Josh Kosnick on all socials. Would love to have a conversation. I mean, I'm not a fit for everyone. Just like no EOS implementer is going to be the fit for everyone. That being said, I would love to have a conversation and see if it is the right fit, and see how I can help, whether it's EOS or anything else. Like one of my biggest passions, or when I potentially are mutually interviewing a one-on-one client, is say, hey, if you're not wanting to be pushed physically, if you're not wanting to be pushed nutritionally, mentally, emotionally, being pushed to be a better husband, wife, father, mother, I'm not your guy, because I want you to have the best life. If you're just looking to get mindset coaching, performance coaching, something of that nature, I got some friends that are top 5 in the world at that. So I look at it more holistically and tell people where I'm a fit and where I'm not a fit.
Sweet. And then last question, do you have specific like either companies that you focus on or specific areas, or are you agnostic and you will take clients across the US?
I'm agnostic. What I have found is West Coast travel is immensely difficult to get back at any reasonable time. So I would prefer, if that's going to be the case, to be virtual. But what I find, Ryan, what I love is when I got out of the financial world, like we were typically financial specific. So I was in some masterminds that were financial specific, and we got really good advice. That being said, I love being able to mix it up in all different industries now, because I'm like, here's what this industry is doing that might work for you. Or conversely, this is what this industry is doing that may work for you. And they just never thought about it, because I've got friends that have they're builders. So they've only been in building masterminds, or in the fitness industry, they've only been in fitness masterminds. And then they get into my world where I'm like giving advice from different industries. They're like, holy crap, I've never thought of it that way. And that's where that diversity of thought comes in. That's like when I brought Alicia in, my integrator, she sits at the table and she's like, hey, great discussion, guys. What are we doing to solve this? We need that diversity of thought to like bring us together and think about things from a different angle. And that's what I love now. And so totally agnostic.
Love it. Josh, thank you so much for taking the time to come on. I can't wait until this airs. This was a brilliant conversation, and look forward to your book. And if you give me the address, maybe I'll come out August 7th and check out the ranch.
You got it. I'll shoot you the link. That way you can post it in show notes as well. But yeah, I'd love to have everyone out to the farm. It's absolutely beautiful. Everyone that comes out there is like, how don't you live here? I'm like, you try getting 4 kids to clean up their mess when businesses or leadership teams come in, then tell me what, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I love it. Awesome. Thank you so much, Josh. I appreciate it.
Yeah, very welcome. Thanks, Ryan.